Eala, the results haven't been there on grass after such a great start to the year. Why she's not getting the results we normally see on the surface?
There is a piece of cardstock pinned to a wall inside the All England Club this week, and printed on it in a font no one is meant to admire is the number 29. Above the number is a name, Alexandra Eala. The card itself is unremarkable.
I think you have to give yourself grace while also being brave.
The kind of small, bureaucratic placard the All England Club uses to label every seeded player on the drawboard. You could walk past it, most people will, but that card is the receipt for something. It is the paperwork at the end of a very long sentence, and the sentence began years before anyone outside Manila knew how to pronounce her name.
Ayala's not had too many wins in Grand Slam events, we have to say that, but she is good on grass. She got to the final at Eastbourne last year. She won the title in Birmingham.
She is 21 years old, she is the world number 30, and as of this week, she is the first Filipina ever seeded at a Grand Slam. The card doesn't say any of that. The card just says 29. Tonight, on the eve of Wimbledon 2026, we are going to find out what that number is hiding. Wimbledon begins tomorrow, Monday, June 29th. Eala enters seeded 29th, fresh off a 6-week grass court run that took her from a Birmingham 125 title on June 7th to a Berlin semifinal a week later, to a first-round loss in Bad Homburg 6 days ago. Today we're going to do something different. We're going inside Alex Eala's daily routine, the real habits behind her climb to the WTA Top 30, and we're going to do it using only what she has actually said on record, plus what the people around her have said on record. She has trained at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca since 2018, coached by Joan Bosch. She is left-handed, which is a routine in itself, a structural feature opponents have to game plan around every time she walks on a court. That is the curtain. We are about to pull it back. Here is the trouble with a story like Eala's, and you should know it before we go any further. The spectacle is loud. A 29 seeding announced with fanfare. A possible second-round match against Serena Williams on a wild card if she wins her opener. A doubles partnership with Venus Williams that began last week in Bad Homburg. An Andy Roddick podcast episode dedicated entirely to her in March. The center court storyline is already writing itself, and 100 social media accounts have already filled in the rest. Speculative morning routines, an exact breakfast menu, a 5 a.m. wake-up call, lifestyle videos built around food she has never confirmed eating. None of that is in this script. Eala has not publicly disclosed the granular shape of her daily mornings. What she has said on record, and what the people who work with her have said on record, is enough. It is, in fact, the entire point. Because the gap between the spectacle and the routine is the whole story. The spectacle is the seeding card. The routine is what put her name above the number. And the routine is unglamorous in a way that almost nothing about tennis at this level is supposed to be. Sunscreen, an outfit she likes.
I really like caldereta. I also love sisig.
Hair she has fixed the same way, a warm-up. A physio session with a man whose name you almost certainly do not know. A coach in the player's box who has been there since she was 14. The hero in this story does not win because her routine is magical. She wins because it is consistent. That is the tension we are going to sit inside for the next 15 minutes. And the evidence for it is on the record. Start with what the seeding actually represents, because seeding isn't a vibe. It is an arithmetic outcome. As of this week, Eala sits at world number 30 on the WTA Tour, with 1,436 ranking points and a career high of 29 reached on March 16th of this year. Her 2026 record is 27 wins and 16 losses across singles play, with $852,858 in prize money earned so far this calendar year. Those are the receipts. The seeding is not a gift. It is the line at the bottom of a spreadsheet. But seeding tells you the score. It doesn't tell you how she got the points. The points came most recently from 1 week in Berlin. On June 18th, in the round of 16, Eala played Elena Rybakina, the world number 2 at the time, a Wimbledon champion, a player whose first serve is widely considered the heaviest weapon on the women's tour. Eala won 7-5, 6-4. It was her first career win over Rybakina and her 5th career win over a top 10 player. She did not go home after that. She played again the next day. On June 19th in the quarterfinals, she beat Elena Svitolina 6-3, 6-4 in 1 hour and 23 minutes. Back-to-back top 10 wins, less than 24 hours apart on grass, the surface that is supposed to punish small frames and recovery legs the hardest. That kind of turnaround is built, not improvised. You do not borrow that from talent. You bank it slowly, over months and years of being in bed by a certain hour and on a physio table by another. The Berlin run ended in the semifinals against Linda Noskova 6-2, 6-4, but the damage to the ranking math had already been done. Take a breath here, because there's a temptation watching footage like that to make it sound like a montage. It wasn't. It was a Wednesday and a Thursday. It was 2 days of work that looked from the outside like a miracle and from the inside almost certainly like a Wednesday and a Thursday. That distinction matters. That distinction is the whole video. 3 weeks earlier, on June 7th, Eala had won the Birmingham 125 final against Nikola Bartunkova, 5-7, 6-3, 7-5, 2 hours and 38 minutes, top seed, closing it out from a set down. It was her second career WTA 125 title after Guadalajara the previous year. At the trophy ceremony, she said something that becomes more interesting the more you listen to it.
I am so honored to be lifting this trophy today. Lifting this trophy does not mean that I will be among the greats yet, so I'm motivated to keep working.
I am so honored to be lifting this trophy today. Lifting this trophy does not mean that I will be among the greats yet, so I'm motivated to keep working. Not yet, her own words. So what does the work actually look like? The most direct on-record answer she has given came in an interview with Couture last August, where she described her match day routine in plain terms. A warm-up, eating before. I like to look good. I like to have my outfit. I like to fix my hair. Sunscreen as non-negotiable. That is the actual quote. That is the actual routine. There is another layer, the part she doesn't post. Her coach, Joan Bosch, a fixture at the Rafa Nadal Academy, has been with her since she was a teenager and has spoken at length to ABS-CBN about her work ethic on record. Her fitness and medical lead at the academy, Luke Bauza, was credited by her own camp on Instagram for rehabbing the shoulder injury that had threatened to interrupt her hard-court season earlier this year. 2 names, Bosch and Bauza. 2 names you probably didn't know an hour ago. And the receipt for all of that, as the coaching, the physio, the unglamorous repetition, came 3 weeks ago in Berlin against Rybakina, then against Svitolina on consecutive afternoons. The seating card on the All England Club wall is the delayed receipt for those 2 days. That is the climax of this story, and it is small enough to fit on a piece of cardstock. Pulling back then to the outside voices, because routine is a thing you can describe, but it gains weight when other professionals confirm what they see. Andy Roddick, a former world number 1 and US Open champion, dedicated an entire episode of his podcast Served to Eala in late March. He co-hosts the show with John Wertheim, the senior writer at Sports Illustrated and a 60 Minutes correspondent, 2 of the most credentialed tennis voices in American sports media. They called her, in their newsletter, the pride of the Philippines. They described her trajectory as a meteoric rise and her status accurately as a national hero. Roddick on the episode teased her about her maturity, joking characteristically that she seemed to him to be secretly 47 years old underneath the 21. He meant it as a compliment, and a specific one. Players who carry themselves the way Eala carries herself in interviews, measured, low volume, deflective in a way that isn't false modesty, but something closer to professional reflex, usually picked that up from someone. In her case, the someone is Joan Bosch. Bosch told ABS-CBN in the network's feature documentary Born for Center Court that what separates Eala isn't a single weapon but the steadiness of her preparation. Remember the promise of this video, the real habits, not the imaginary ones. Here is what real looks like. A coach who has been in the same chair for years, a fitness lead who quietly puts a shoulder back together, a US Open champion who watched enough of her tape to commit a podcast hour to it. That is the validating chorus. None of it requires invention. Now widen the frame, because this seeding is not happening in a vacuum. The Wimbledon women's draw this year includes a generation of players Eala's age and younger, including Emma Raducanu, the 2021 US Open champion, who is seated one spot behind her at number 30, Eala at 29, Raducanu at 30. That is the company. That is the room. And the math of how she got there matters beyond her own ranking, because no Filipina has ever been seated at a Grand Slam before. Not at Wimbledon, not at the US Open, not at Roland Garros or in Melbourne. Southeast Asia has had Grand Slam presence on the men's side intermittently for decades, but the women's draw has never carried a Filipina seed into the second week's bracket math until now. The cultural reaction has matched the moment. Reddit's r/Philippines and r/tennis PH threads carrying the seeding announcement crossed 300 upvotes within hours of the bracket leaking. Filipino fan groups across Facebook have been circulating images of the draw all week. Some of those posts are speculative, fabricated morning routines, invented training schedules, and we are deliberately not citing them. But the underlying signal is real. A country that has, for 2 decades, watched its boxing and basketball icons carry its flag into global rooms is watching a 21-year-old left-handed tennis player carry it into one of the oldest rooms in the sport. Tomorrow, she is drawn to face Renata Zarazua of Mexico in the first round, per the published draw. If she wins, the projected second-round match is against Serena Williams, who entered Wimbledon on a wild card. That is what seeding 29th in 2026 looks like in practice. A winnable opener and a generational name waiting on the other side of it. And then the part of the story that keeps it honest. 6 days ago in Bad Homburg, Eala played her first match after the Berlin semifinal high. She lost. Elise Mertens beat her 6-3, 6-3 in the first round. It was Mertens' third straight win over Eala in their head-to-head, including a Madrid second-round meeting earlier this spring. There was no dramatic narrative inside the loss. Mertens was simply the better player on the day, on a surface that favored her timing. Eala has not publicly addressed the Bad Homburg result. What she has done is enter the Wimbledon draw 6 days later anyway. That is the part of the routine that nobody photographs. Losing a match on a Tuesday and being on a practice court somewhere in southwest London by Friday. The routine does not make her invincible, it makes her repeatable. And repeatable, in this sport, is the closest thing to a superpower there is. So look at the room she is in now. A year ago, Alex Eala walked into Wimbledon as an unseeded wildcard hopeful with 3 junior Grand Slam titles on her resume and a ranking that did not yet warrant a placard on the All England Club wall. Tonight, on the eve of the 2026 tournament, she sits inside the seeded players' room at the same club, a 21-year-old number 29 with a Serena Williams second-round storyline in front of her if she wins her opener, a Venus Williams doubles partnership already on her schedule, an Andy Roddick podcast episode on her timeline, and the first Filipina seed in the history of the sport beside her name. The 2 men whose names you didn't know an hour ago, Joan Bosch and Luke Bauza, are credentialed into the players' box. 6 days ago, she lost 6-3, 6-3. Tomorrow she walks out to center court anyway. That is the routine, the sunscreen, the outfit, the hair, the warm-up, the repeat. It didn't make her famous, it made her seeded. That number is still on the wall, she is still under it. In her own words, from Birmingham 3 weeks ago, lifting this trophy does not mean that I will be among the greats yet, so I'm motivated to keep working. Not yet. Keep working. That's the routine. That's the climb to the top 30. And tomorrow on center court, that's the room she's in now. If you want to watch the receipt arrive in real time, subscribe. We'll be covering every match of her Wimbledon run on this channel, starting with the Zarazua first round.